Welcome guys to Horse Apology. As you are getting on, if you guys can find the chat box and put in the chat box your information as far as what county you're from, that'll help us keep attendance as we wait and give everybody a little bit more time to get on. So glad you're with us today. Hope you've had some lunch and you're ready to learn about horses. All right, thanks to you guys that put your information in the chat box. If you haven't done that, you can put your information in the chat box. That helps us just keep track of our attendance. It's like we have a good group on again today, so we're glad you guys are on. We're going to give it just a couple more minutes and then we'll get going.
Dawn, I did want to let you know that the new link that you sent out is working because I got registered.
Yay, I'm so happy to hear that. After our little struggle at the link, I tell you, I'm glad to hear that. Thanks for sharing. So I'm glad you guys got that. If you guys do want to register and you didn't get the link, you can put your email in the chat box and I can send it to you as well. The people that I had emails addresses for from like previous workshops, I had sent them an email yesterday. So if you haven't got registered for the virtual contest for this weekend and want that, just put your email address in that chat box and I'll get that email sent out to you.
And if we register and like forget something, can we go back in and fix it?
So yeah, well, what's going to happen, just kind of I can share that with you, is that when we get that set up, is you're going to get one chance to go in and work on your contest, and then once you leave, like you can't go back in. However, while you're in the contest, you can use whatever resources you want to help answer questions, you know. So if there's something that you wanted to go look up or things like that, you absolutely can. So there's not going to be like a time limit. So you could open it and be done in 15 minutes, or you could open it and spend 2 hours doing it. It's just how much ever time you want to spend looking up maybe something that you've forgotten. So yeah, hopefully I've got most everything up on the website. I still don't have Miss Becky's from last week, but hopefully I'll get those from her today, and we'll get those up on the website so you guys have those to reference as well. So yeah, so thanks for sharing that with me. I'm glad it's working. So so on Tyler and Hayden, oh, there you go. Thanks. I just need your email address. I will get that sent to you. So perfect. Okay. So we're right on our time today. This is our last session for apology. And so after today, this is course apology that you guys are on for the next half an hour. And today's our last learning session. But like I say, all that information is up online. Actually, study it. So if you have questions or whatever, let me know. Like I said, Becky's links are still not there, but I will get those up hopefully soon, ASAP. So today, though, I'm excited. We're going to round off our last session on horse apology is on halter judging. Part of the apology contest at the state showcases that you have to judge a halter class. So today's our last session, and then at the virtual contest, you'll be giving a class that you'll have to place. So we're going to round out that as our final session that we're learning about. I am excited to say that we have Georgia Younglove on, who's going to teach our session today. And Georgia actually works at Eastern Wyoming College in the ag department, and they're the ones that are actually sponsoring our virtual contest on the weekend. So I'm super excited to have her on, and thankful to Eastern Wyoming College to partner on us and allow this to happen. She's also the one that's going to send each one of you that pre-register for that contest a nice pair of EWC gloves. So remember, if you haven't pre-registered, go get pre-registered if you're going to do the contest, because then you can get your free gloves, okay? The other thing I have to say is that Georgia has a ton of experience in horse judging. When she was in college, she judged on the collegiate horse judging team and actually placed in the top at national shows, and so or national judging contests. So we're super excited and lucky to have her on and have her share information with you guys on how to place halter classes. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to her, but I need to make her a co-host. Hold on first, let me get you a co-host. Share. Okay, so I'm going to turn it over to her. She can add maybe to her introduction. Remember, we want this interactive, so you guys can unmute yourself, ask questions, anything like that. I'll mark the chat box. You can put them in there. If you're not asking questions, I'll just try to keep yourself muted, just so that we can try to keep the background noise down. We have a pretty good group on here. And so, but please pick her brain, ask questions, however, as we move along. So with that, I think, Georgia, you should be able to share your screen now.
Okay. Let's see if I can figure this out.
Should be that little green button that kind of looks like a package on the bottom. There you go. Yep.
Okay, so let's see now if we can get the PowerPoint to come up.
Yes.
Okay, so can everybody see the PowerPoint now? Yay, nay?
Yes, we can see it.
Okay, perfect.
Yes.
Okay, so first of all, I want to thank the Gallet. Oh, and you have to bear with me because my thing is actually set up to go on its own, and I couldn't figure out how to get rid of those in here. So we might have just a little bit of a challenge, but we'll figure it out. But I wanted to thank the Gallet K-State. She actually developed the PowerPoint that we use in our class at EWC. But it's kind of one of those things that when somebody creates a great resource, there's no reason to go recreate the wheel. And so we do take advantage of that opportunity to utilize the PowerPoint that she put together. And so, as Dawn said, I did judge for Oklahoma State when I was in college. That was a long, long time ago. I actually coach livestock judging now instead of horses. but horses were kind of my passion at the collegiate level. And so today what we're going to do is just talk about horse judging from a halter perspective. So we're not going to get into reining or Western riding or hunter under saddle, anything like that. We're just going to look at it from the standpoint of judging the halter horse. And so when we start to look at halter horses, you guys, there's really 4 criteria that we're going to evaluate. We're going to look at balance, we're going to look at muscling, we're going to look at structural correctness, and we're going to look at breed and sex characteristics. And so we're going to work through each one of these criteria and talk about what's included in them. And so you can kind of get an idea of when I'm looking at that horse, how do I evaluate balance? How important is muscling, that type of thing. Okay, so if we start with balance, okay, when we're talking about balance, we're talking about how well the horse goes together, okay? And so when we look at a horse, the first thing you're going to want to look at as far as balance goes is the relationship of the shoulder, the barrel, and like I said, you're going to have to bear with me on this PowerPoint, the shoulder, the barrel, and the hip. And so you'll see there's 3 purple circles, okay? And so if I have a balanced horse, those 3 purple circles should all be the same size, okay? If I draw it and I have the front has a really big circle and the middle has a little small circle and the back has a really big circle, then he's not balanced, okay? Or if he has a really big one at the back end and the other 2 are smaller. And so we want him to be balanced from the standpoint of those 3 circles should be the same size, okay? The second part of balance is what we call the top to bottom line ratio. And so you'll see those red lines. And if a horse is balanced correctly, his top line should be shorter than his underline. So if you look at those 2 red lines, you can see that the one that runs across his back is shorter than the one that runs from the back of his front leg to the front of his hind leg, okay? Now, why do they have to have a shorter back in relation to their length of underline? Because that's what allows them to have the right angles to their shoulder or hip, or in other words, a symmetrical angle. And so if you see those black lines, you can see that those sit at about a 45-degree angle. Okay, why do we care? Those of you guys that ride horses, if I took that shoulder line and I straightened that out and took the angle out of it and made his shoulder straighter, when you ride him, it's going to be riding a pogo stick. So like, do you have one of those horses that when you trot him, it feels like you're just getting beat to death? Chances are he probably is a little straight in his shoulder. Now, from a longevity standpoint, why that becomes important is because those joints are absorbing concussion every time he travels. And if I don't have some angle in there, then it's, like I said, it's like a jackhammer and it just keeps pounding it together. And consequently, we'll start to break down his joints quicker. Our horses don't stay as sound. So instead of having a 28-year-old horse, is by the time he's 12 or 13, his joints are all wore out and he can't do what he needs to do anymore, okay? In horses, you guys, balance is paramount. Like they have to be balanced, okay? Does anybody have questions kind of on how that works as far as the 3 purple circles or the red lines or the black lines? Make sense to everybody? Okay. All right, the next thing on our list was muscling, okay? And if we look at muscling, then one thing is in horses that's really different from livestock is if we look at livestock, we want them to have lots of muscle because essentially if we're raising market animals, that's what we're going to eat, okay? But in horses, they just have to have enough muscle to fit their body size. So if I take a little, let's say we took a little miniature pony and we compare him to a Percheron, they're not going to have the same amount of muscle. A little miniature pony should have muscle to fit him. A Percheron should have the kind of muscle that a draft horse is going to have to be able to pull big old tractors and things like that. Okay, so the thing to remember in horses, you guys, is that bigger does not always mean better, okay? It's back to balance. If you ever wanted to say what are the 3 most important things about horse judging is, from a halter theme, is that they're balanced, 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 okay? So once they have adequate muscling, from there, more muscling is not a benefit in the horse industry like it is in market animals, okay? Now, the other thing that we have to be careful of in the horse industry is that we're actually distinguishing between what is muscle and what is fat, okay? So like we had a little black and white pinto, and we used to say that he had the 10-gallon syndrome. What do I mean by a 10-gallon syndrome? Is you could take a bucket, 5-gallon bucket of water, and you could pour it along his back line, and it would sit in the little groove down his back line and never spill off the horse. Okay, that's how fat he was. He was just a toad. Okay, and so we don't want him to have fat. We want it to be muscle. So how do we figure out if they have muscle? Okay, the two best places to check for muscle on a horse is the forearm and the gaskin. Okay, now let me see. I'm going to back up to the picture of the horse we were just looking at. Okay, so this is the gaskin right here on the right. Can you guys see where the little arrow is circling? Somebody shake their head up and down, maybe.
Yes.
Okay, perfect. All right, then on the front, this is the forearm. Okay, those are the two best places to look for muscle, because when you look at that, that is the last two places that are going to express muscle in the horse. And so consequently, if they have a big gaskin and a big forearm, they've got muscle everywhere else. Okay, they can't have muscling in the gaskin and the forearm and not have muscling any place else on the body. Physiologically, it doesn't work that way. Okay. Now, the other thing to think about, though, in the gaskin is not only do they get muscle on the outside, but they also get muscle on the inside. So we'll talk about outside gaskin muscle versus inside gaskin muscle. And so we want them to have it on both, because that's what's going to support them then when they travel or move. Okay. So muscle, you guys remember, yeah, we want them to have muscle, but we don't want them to put that at the expense of everything else. Okay, the other thing that they always taught us at Oklahoma State for muscling is that if I walked around behind my horse, okay, and we're going to skip ahead just a little bit because I want to look at the back end of a horse. Okay, so we're going to skip to this picture here. Maybe if I can get back there. There we go. Okay, so when we walk around behind a horse, is this kind of what the back end of a horse looks like? Okay, one of the things that they always told us at Oklahoma State is when you looked at the back of a horse is think about a pear sitting on the counter and an apple sitting on the counter. If I look at a pear, where is the whitest part of the pear? Can anybody tell me what the whitest part of the pear is? You can unmute yourself.
The bottom.
The bottom of it. Yes. Okay, now if I compare that to an apple, what is the whitest part of the apple?
The top.
The top end. Okay, so we want a horse to have a butt that's shaped like a pear, not a butt that's shaped like an apple. Because if we look at a horse that's shaped like an apple, that means he's going to have the most width up high, and then he's going to taper as he goes down, which tells us he has no gaskin muscles, right? If I look at a horse that is a pear, he's going to be shaped up high, but then he's going to kind of come in, and then he's going to widen again in the stifle, and so he'll have more muscling. Okay, so that's another thing that can help identify when you look at them from the back whether they have muscle or if they're just kind of fat. Okay. All right, next thing that we had on our list was structural correctness. Okay, structural correctness is huge in horses, you guys, because if they're not built right, they can't do what they're supposed to do. So a lot of times you'll hear people say they have to have the proper form to have greater function. Okay, and all that is a fancy way to say he has to be built right so he can actually travel correctly. Okay, so we want to make sure that he is designed correctly, that his bones are where they're supposed to be, so that he can actually move the way he needs to move. And also it's going to increase his longevity or increase the amount of time that he's actually going to live or survive. Okay, so now lots of people say, well, wait a minute, I have a crooked-legged horse and he does just fine. And I won't argue with that. Okay, like I had a roommate when I was in college that rode jumping horses, and literally she had a horse that she brought to college that he was so structurally incorrect that when he walked, his hocks would actually hit. And when she jumped, she had to boot his legs up really good, because otherwise he would actually clip the backs of his front feet and bloody the back of the hoof. And so, yes, can they still function? Yes, they can still function. You'll see a lot of race horses that are actually very structurally incorrect. Okay, the problem is, though, is there's so much stress put on those legs and those joints that those animals don't have any long-term use. Or in other words, they may be great for 2 or 3 years and then they're done because their joints and their bones just can't handle it. Okay, with that said, then what are we talking about when we say structural correctness, or what do we want to look at from structural correctness? Okay, so here is a picture, or 3 pictures, one from the front, one from the rear, and one from the side. Okay, so if I look at the front view, if I could take a string and put it right there at the front of the shoulder, right on the point, and I could drop that straight down, I should be able to draw a line that would end up with half the knee on one side of the line. Oops, sorry guys, half the knee on the other side of the line. And then it should go down, and same thing on the foot. Okay, half and half. Now, if you look at this particular picture, his left side is really, really good. His right side is off just a little bit. but it's not enough that we would call him really structurally incorrect. Okay, he's pretty balanced as far as having half a leg on each side of the line. Okay, same thing from the rear then, is if I drew a line from his pin bones straight down, it should go right down through the middle of his hock and then right down through the middle of his foot and kind of separate right there where you have the two balls on the back of the hoof. Okay, if I look at from the side, again, I should be able to drop a line straight down from the joint, and it's going to hit right on the front of his foot. And if I drew one right straight down from the back of his hind end, just a minute, we gotta get our picture back, it would hit the back of his hock and almost lay on the back side of that cannon bone as he runs down. Okay, so that would be like the ideal horse if we could draw those lines and have that kind of symmetry, okay, or those kinds of lines. Now let's look at what could be some problems that we'll see and what are they going to create. Okay, so if we look at the front first, you guys, if you look at up at the top on the left-hand side, you'll see that horse is base narrow. And what we mean by that is if you look at his shoulders and then look at his feet are narrower than his shoulders. So he stands base narrow. But the other part of it too is if you look at his toes, he toes in. So now when we ask this horse to walk or trot, he's gonna do what we call paddling. So he's actually gonna swing that leg out and bring it back in, okay? Then if you look at the other one where he's base narrow but his toes go out, okay, he's gonna plant and swing. So he's planting them, he's rotating them out. So he kind of goes the other direction. Now, both of those become a problem, you guys, because they can interfere with each other as they travel, and we don't want them to clip their legs and hurt themselves, but if they're built like that, that's essentially what's gonna happen. Okay, now we can have them base wide, meaning now their width is wider than their shoulders and they're still toed in, okay, or they're wider, they toed out. Now they're not as likely to interfere as far as hitting each other, the one leg hitting the other, but they're still gonna paddle, they're still gonna wing when they go the other direction, okay? So that's why we want to be able to draw those lines, is that those feet will travel straight forward and they don't hit each other. Okay, now we're gonna look at the rear view, okay? And on the rear view, again, if we have base narrow, you can see the two blue lines are drawn down there, and you'll see that they end up outside of the foot. Or if we have a base wide, we draw the lines down and they end up inside the foot, okay? Or the other thing that's real common is we'll see what we'll call cow-hocked, okay? In this case, the hocks end up inside the line, but the feet end up outside the line, okay? Again, when these horses travel, there's a potential that their legs are going to interfere with each other, and then they could injure themselves or their rider if it was severe enough, okay? All right, next thing is the last thing on our list was the idea of breed and sex characteristic, okay? So breed characteristics, you guys, is that they just have to look like whatever breed they are. In just a minute, we're going to look at a couple of those breeds. So we'll look at like some common ones like the Arabs, quarter horses, and Morgans. We'll kind of talk about what some of the common characteristics are. Okay, then sex characteristic is we want them to look like a boy. We want them to look like a girl. Okay, so if you look at a stallion, he should have a big jowl. He should be heavier muscled. He's going to look like a boy. If he sticks his head out of the stall, you'd want him to look like a boy. Okay, a mare is going to have a smaller, more petite head. She's going to be prettier looking. She wants to look like a girl. Okay. Remember, geldings are boys, so they should still look like boys. All right. Okay, so we're going to look at Arabs and we're going to look at quarter horses and Morgans, just so talk about some difference as far as breeds go. Okay. And so if I look at, stop just a minute. I'm having issues here, guys. Okay. Okay, where did our Arabian go? He just does not want to hang out. Okay, we're going to have to go fast because the Arab won't stay there. He doesn't like to stay. Okay, so if you look at the Arab, he's got the dish face. He has the arched neck. Okay, he's kind of shorter and flatter in his croup, and he's more refined in his bone structure. Okay, so he's going to be a little lighter boned than other breeds, but that's part of him. The Arabians were actually originated in the Bedouin tribes over in the desert, and so they traveled on sand, and so they're more designed to be able to survive and travel in that area. Okay, but the dish face is real common in the Arab, and then that nice, really cool arching neck that you see on him. Okay, all right. The next one we're going to look at is a quarter horse, but before we go to the quarter horse, okay. Like, I'm not smart enough to look at the chat box, but hopefully maybe Dawn can look in the chat box. How about if some of you guys post a couple characteristics that you think would distinguish a quarter horse from other breeds? Or if you want to unmute yourself and throw them out, we can do it that way too. What are some ways that you could distinguish a quarter horse from other breeds of horses?
It says muscling in the hindquarters in the chat box.
Okay. Any others? Okay.
Muscular
Let's look
head
at a
and
quarter horse
body,
real quick.
used for
Okay.
multiple purposes.
Yes, they are designed. Oops, now we gotta go back. Oh, there we go. Okay, so as you said, they're heavier muscled. They're really stocky built, and they were designed, where the name came from is they were actually designed to run a quarter mile instead of a long race like a thoroughbred. Okay, so they came out as the quarter horses. So they're lots more stocky, they're more compact body type, really expressive in their muscling. They tend to have more angulation in their hip than what an Arabian would. And if you look at him, you can see here that he does not have a dish face. He doesn't have the long, elegant neck. Okay, he's designed to be able to travel a quarter of a mile. He's the endurance type horse. Okay. All right, so we talked about the Arabs, we talked about the quarter horses. Another really distinguished breed that gives you some really characteristics that kind of set them apart is a Morgan. Does anybody know what some of the distinguishing characteristics of a Morgan is?
High neck set.
Okay.
Very level top line.
Yep.
Sorry guys, I interrupted. Who unmuted themselves? Anybody else? Thinner face.
Okay. All right. Here's our Morgan. Okay, and so like we said, if you look at the Morgan, he's much leveler in his top line. Okay, he's gonna be flatter through his croup. Okay, he has the tall arching neck, kind of like the Arabian, but he doesn't have that dish face. He's still got a smaller, more elegant face, but it's not dished like an Arabian. Okay, the other thing is when they're in a natural stance, okay, lots of people think that we make them do this. This is actually natural, and so they do tend to stand with a more stretched or elongated hind leg. Okay, Morgans were actually developed up in the northeastern part of the United States as horses that could work in those rocky grounds up there to pull carts and stuff. Another really kind of interesting thing about Morgans, you guys, and we didn't really talk about that in all the breeds, is that all breeds have certain colors. And so in the Morgans, for example, you would never call a Morgan a sorrel. Okay, there's no such things as sorrels in Morgans. Instead, they're different colors of chestnut. So they're like a liver chestnut, okay, or something of that nature. And so that's the other thing that we'll see in breeds is a lot of them may look like they're the same colors, but just because of the breed associations, they may actually call them different colors. Okay, now, before we go anywhere, does anybody have any questions on those 4 criteria? That's the 4 criteria that we would, oops, wrong way, sorry guys. We would think of as far as evaluating horses, okay? All right, what we're gonna do now is we're gonna judge a class really quick before we let you go today, okay? So if everybody could maybe post their placing in the chat box, okay?
Make sure, let's test this and see how we do today. Post it privately though. So don't post it where everybody can see it. Post it privately, and you're gonna select Georgia. And if you guys don't know how to do that, we're gonna practice that because you might need to do this at some other point if you're doing something else. So, and where it says 2, you're gonna select Georgia Younglove instead of everybody, and then post your placing in there and see if we can figure out how to send it that way.
Uh-oh, it's still on horses. How do I leave them?
Are they coming, Georgia?
Oh. There we go. How do I get to where I have my screen shared? When I click on the chat, like it won't pull up the chats. How do I get it to do that? So I can read them. Are you still there, Dawn?
Oh, sorry, I was giving instructions to nothing. If you go to the top, Georgia, usually
Okay.
there's a little drop down menu that comes out of the top of your screen. And
Yep, and I see that it says like chat, invite, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
And I click on the chat, but it doesn't do anything.
Okay. Sometimes it just won't. Like there's kind of this little glitch thing. Okay, guys, challenge, you're gonna do it again. Resend them to me privately. How about that?
Send them to Dawn privately so she can see your placing.
So select Dawn Sanchez on there and resend them again to me privately, and we can get your answers. Oh, here they come. Good. Keep sending them. I've only got 4 and there's like about 18 of you. Keep coming. Good job, guys.
Okay, we're gonna give you about 1 more minute just so that then we'll have a chance to walk through them really quick.
Keep coming, guys. Make up your mind, quick, quick, quick. Okay.
Okay, so question for you, Dawn, now that you're kind of looking at them, okay? What is probably the most common placing?
The most common is most everybody got 3 on top.
Okay, perfect.
And then the next most common is lots of people got 4 on bottom.
Perfect. Okay, you guys did really good. Like if we look at this class and something when you're judging you guys is do the easy thing or the big things and then worry about making the really hard decisions. And so if you come up to this class, I think the first thing that you should notice is you have a horse on here that is really poor balanced, wants to get tie-in really low in his neck. You'd want to fix that neck set. Maybe gets a little steep in his shoulder. He doesn't have those cool symmetrical lines that we talked about in order of having a 45-degree angle at the shoulder and the hip. Tends to get a little longer in his back, and that would be 4. Okay, take that horse and put him away, and then you don't have to worry about him anymore. Okay, so he went to the bottom of the class. Okay, then you're left with 3 horses. And when you start to look at them, I think there's 2 of those horses that really surface as being really high quality horses. You got to love the way their heads are put on, the way their neck's set on there. You look at their length of back in relation to underline, and they're short backed and long underline. They have great angles to their shoulders, and that's going to be your 3 and 2. And so if we look at those 2 individuals and we say, okay, what are the differences between them, or what really separates those 2 individuals? Is like we said, they're both great quality. Okay, but if you look at 3, his hip is a little bit longer than 2. If you look at 3, he's a little more expressively muscled in that hind quarter. Okay, so like we said, muscling is not everything, but when we start to look at these 2 horses that are so closely balanced together as far as looking at balance and structural correctness and breed quality, then we come back and say, okay, which one does have the advantage? And so 3 tends to have the advantage. Okay, then we move to our middle pair, and you have 2 and 1. Okay, if you look at 2, like we said, he's super high quality. He's the one that kind of fits with your 3 horse. He's more powerful in his hip. Okay, and if you look at him, he's got more muscle from front to rear, and he's just a nicer balanced horse. Remember when I said you draw those circles? If you draw the 2 circles on 2, they're the same size. If you draw the circles on 1, his front circle is actually bigger than his hind circle. Part of that's because he gets a little long in his back in relation to his length of underline. Still, when we move into that bottom pair, though, remember we said that 4 is the one that's really kind of has some issues as far as his neck set goes. He's the one that's get a little straighter up in his shoulder, and he doesn't, whoops, I went too far, sorry guys. He wants to get too upright in his shoulder, which is going to reduce the comfort to ride in. What that does is also sets his leg back. So we've got some structure issues going on there. The other thing is if you look again at that 1 horse from a muscle standpoint, he is longer, he's more defined in his muscle patterns, okay? And he's got a much better neck. If you look where the yellow arrow is, you can see how much higher and tighter he ties in right there at the pectoral muscles. And so he's just a nicer, balanced, higher quality individual. Okay. All right. Questions, you guys, at all?
All right, George, we are out of time. So
perfect. Good luck, you guys. Anybody?
Questions for Georgia before we,
What was the correct judgment?
the correct
3,
place?
2, 1, 4.
Do you have cut?
Oh, cuts would be 2, 4, and 5.
2, 4, 5. Good job. Okay, so before you guys leave, this is our final apology. I'm going to let you vote because I did this on the equipment, is that I'm going to let you guys choose. Do you want 2 halter classes or do you want 3 halter classes for Saturday's contest? 2 or 3? Put it in your chat box and we'll see. Oh, nice. It looks like 3's going to win. 2's, 3's kind of split there. Okay, how about we'll see how many we can come up with and that are good classes. If we can come up with 3, we'll put them. If not, we'll stick to a 2. Okay, there's another question in here really quick before we leave, Georgia.
There's more 2's than 3's.
Is there more 2's? Did you count them for me? Okay.
Yes.
You are awesome. Okay, so 2's it is. Okay, Georgia, there's a question in here that says, is there more resources that they could look online for halter judging?
Yes, if you go to it's actually called livestockjudging.com, but there's a horse option in there, and they have free classes.
Great.
And
That's
so
great.
like sometimes you have to buy to get all the classes, but there are free ones that are available in that program. And it's livestockjudging.com, but it'll link you then to the horse judging one as well.
All right, perfect. Okay, and then there was a question about cuts, and we don't have a lot of time
Thank
to spend on
you.
cuts. Thanks,
Thanks,
guys.
guys.
There was a question on cuts, and so I don't know if you're still on cuts. Is that,
Okay.
do you want to, you can't do a whole lesson because we're out of time, but if you want to explain.
Yep, really fast. Okay, cuts they tell you how hard the decision was. So like on the top where it has a 2-point cut, that means that is a closer pair than the bottom where you have a 5-point cut. So like if you get a 7-point cut, that means that if I was driving by there at 55 miles an hour, I should still get it right. Okay, so the higher the cut, the easier the decision was.
Perfect. Okay, a couple more questions are, you will not have to do reasons at the contest. It's just going to place. Okay. Will you repeat the cuts again, Georgia? Sorry.
2, 4, 2, what did we say? 2, 4, 5.
2, 4, 5. Yep, 2, 4, 5. Okay. And then the final question here is about the contest on Saturday. The links are not posted, but the contest links will be on that virtual website that is on the State 4-H website. And the links will be posted at 9 o'clock on Saturday morning, and you have until 9 o'clock on Sunday night to finish them in there. So perfect. Bailey, I'm going to have Georgia respond to the chat box there. She can finish sharing her screen. Can you stop sharing your screen, Georgia?
Yes, how do I do that?
And there should be a little green button that says stop share. The same thing, or a little button that says stop sharing your screen.
Little button says, I have a new share.
Is it foods now?
Yep, we're going to roll into foods.
Stop video?
No,
I
it
found
should say
it, I
stop
found it. Okay, there we go.
Okay, perfect. Okay, Georgia, there's a message in the chat box there from Bailey Mueller about the back, if you can enter her in there so that we can move on to foods. And then
Yep.
Erin, is it Denny from out of state? If you will put your email address in the chat box, I will get you I'll send you an email with the link. So if Erin is on there, put your email address in there, and then I'll send you the information of where you can go register. Perfect. Yeah, we want you guys to participate. It doesn't matter what county you're in, so I will get that. I got your email address there, and I will get it sent to you. Okay. All right, guys, we're going to roll into foods. I'm super excited. If you're just joining us, please put what county you're from in the chat box. And we'll get rolling here to foods. And if you are just on for horses, you can pop off if you want. So we're going to roll over to foods and move into our final session of foods. Okay, I see some new people that are just getting on. If you're just getting on, make sure you put in the chat box what county you're from, just so I can track as far as who we have on. So we have some new people on there. That would be great. Okay, let me just find, I need, Amber, I'm trying to make you a co-host so you can share.
We shouldn't have to share. We just need to see our video, which we don't have on yet.
Okay. Well, I did it. You might want to share because it might make it video bigger. I was thinking that last night when we got off. So if you share your screen right now, let's practice this just really quick. If you share your screen right now, I think it's going to make it bigger. Let's see if it does.
Well, so my screen is going to show, because the only thing I have open, we just have a laptop. It's just going to be
Oh, I see. It's going to be the
Zoom
Zoom
link.
Okay,
Yeah.
I'll just make you a screen so you can stop sharing. I'll make it so it becomes speaker view, and it should make it big. Okay, let's see if this works. Okay, I think it's going to work. Yep, you look big. Okay, so today, guys, on foods, if you're just joining us, one final thing, just another reminder, please put where you're at in the chat box, what county you're from. That just helps us keep attendance. I'm super excited. This is kind of our trial run we're trying to do things as we went along the last 2 weeks of doing our virtual sessions. And today we're using something called the document camera. So we're super excited to test this and see how amazing this is going to work. I think it's going to work great. But so today in our food skill-a-thon, the last thing that we're going to teach you guys about is measuring foods. And I think this is really important because this really is a key to whether you're going to have a recipe turn out or not turn out. And so I'm super thankful that we have a volunteer. She actually works for Extension, but she usually works behind the computer. So we're super excited that she's willing to teach us. And this is Miss Janet from Washakie County, and she is going to talk about proper methods of measuring foods, and then we're going to talk just a little smidge about conversions, like figuring out how you tell one measurement from the other. I'm having a mind blank, whatever that's called. But anyway, so with that, I'm going to turn it over to Miss Janet. And Amber Armejo is our camera person behind the scenes. You guys don't get to see her, but she's the 4-H educator in Washakie County, and she's helping us. There she is. She's waving at y'all. So you guys got to meet Amber if you were on a dog skill-a-thon one earlier. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Miss Janet.
Okay. Hi, guys. I'm Janet Benson. I've been a 4-H foods and nutrition leader for, I don't know, 18, 19 years. And yes, I also work for Extension. I'm the secretary here. So we are going to get started on May. I do want to show you, first of all, what I use for measuring. Any spoons, like this is a tablespoon, here's a half tablespoon. I happen to have a set where they're all clear. I kind of like clear stuff, but one thing I like about these is they sit flat. Another thing that I really like is this is a whole set, and it includes this scraper, which as I'm showing you how to measure, we will use. I also have this, it's a sliding thing right here that shows half teaspoon, quarter teaspoon. I like using it once in a while. I also have a cup that's similar with a sliding bar to it. And this, which you all know, is a liquid measure. And then this I like. It's what I use. I'm gonna show you how to use it for brown sugar, but then I use it for a lot of things: molasses, peanut butter, grape. Okay, first thing
I have one of those.
First thing we're gonna do, let me move some of my stuff out of the way. We are gonna talk about measuring flour. I keep my flour in the bag, in my canister. Some of you might dump it out. But before I measure it, into a bowl, whatever I wind up not using goes back into the bag. And when you measure flour, you want to stir it just a little bit to give it a little air so that it's not packed. Because if you pack it, you might have gosh, 1 1/4 cups of flour instead of just 1 cup. So we're gonna do this, and then we're gonna lightly put it into a measuring cup. And again, you're gonna see I'm not packing it. I'm just letting it go in there. We'll just keep doing it a spoonful at a time. Looks like I should have put a little more flour in here. And then, once we have close to what we think is enough flour, I'm going to take the flat edge of this and I'm going to move it back and forth. I'm not packing it again. You see, I'm just going to move it back. I fill in all the corners, all the holes, scrape it off, and that's how you measure flour correctly. Any questions? Next, we're going to do sugar. Sugar is much more granulated, so we don't really have to do anything with it unless there's a lump of sugar. Then you might have to smash it with something. But I just measure this like this. And I also want to show you, if you have a butter knife that has a flat side, that is certainly what you can use to make sure that you have everything on there. Don't use this side, the curved side. That's going to take too much sugar out. You just do it like this. There's your measurement for sugar. The other thing is, you've noticed we're not really cooking today, but you don't want to ever measure anything over the bowl or the pan that you're actually cooking in, because you could accidentally get too much sugar or flour.
Okay.
Let's talk about measuring spoons now. First of all, make sure that you have the right spoon. You might want to have your recipe right in front of you so that you don't get a tablespoon versus a teaspoon. That's really, really important to actually measure with the right measuring spoon. The other thing is to make sure if it calls for baking powder, you're using baking powder and not baking soda. I'm going to show you measuring salt. And you know what we're going to do? We're going to pretend like this is my bowl of stuff I'm making. So when I get ready to put my salt in, I'm not going to do it over this because I could put too much in. I'm going to do it, usually at home, I do it over the sink or over the garbage to make sure I have the right amount. Then we take our scraper, fill it in, and I'm not going to dump it in there because I'm putting that flour back in the flour. The next thing we have is something a little bit thicker than salt, and salt and sugar are pretty much the same granular. It's hard to pack it in. So one thing you want to do, when I did this, like this, even when I dumped it out the first time, some stuck in there. What I'm going to do is actually use a different spoon. This I can measure over the baking powder can, take my scraper, and there I have measured the baking powder. But if you push that in very hard, you're going to pack it in there and have more baking powder in your product than you want. The next thing is, let's talk about liquids. This is used specifically for liquids, and this is much better to use than, say, something like this. This, you all know, has a spout. It's got ounces. You can figure it out if you need ounces or cups. So we're going to pour some liquid in here. And I do it down at eye level to make sure that I'm putting in the right amount. Whenever I'm cooking, this is what I do. I do it at eye level, and yep, I have a ½ cup of liquid that I'm going to pour into my recipe. So it's pretty important, like Dawn said at the beginning, to make sure you measure correctly so your recipe turns out correctly. The next thing we'll talk about is vanilla. Vanilla, again, is a liquid. That's the good thing about teaspoons. They are either liquid or dry. So you don't need to have a special something like you do for liquids. And of course, whatever fits in here, that's what you're going to put in the recipe. There's no shaving it off at the top. Now, Andy, lighter thing here. And we're going to measure some brown sugar. I thought I had a big scoop. I did. This measure is, this is showing, I'm going to put it down to a 1/3 cup. I don't know if you can see this, but you just slide it to where you want it. That says 1/3, 1/4, 1/3, 1/2. This is the base. And with brown sugar, you always pack brown sugar. So use your spoon, pack it in there, and you can use the spoon every other spoonful, but you definitely want in. The only time you wouldn't is if the recipe specifically says brown sugar not packed. Otherwise, the assumption is this is how you measure it. So let's keep going here. Packing it in. And then before I top it off at, or level it off if I have to with a straight edge, I'm going to look back and see if I, whoops, yeah, I accidentally, or this slid a little bit. I pushed down too hard on it. I don't know if you can see that. So we're going to put it back down to the 1/3 measuring cup, and we see there's a little room. So we'll put in just a little more. And the way you know if you've packed it correctly, when you dump it into your recipe or your bowl or whatever you're doing, it should hold its shape. So let's see if it's going to hold its shape. Yep, see that? Oh. Just want to make sure that it holds its shape. You know you've done it right. The other thing you could do is you could certainly measure brown sugar in your regular measuring cup, and the same way you would pack it in. But we're going to now, and like I said, I use this a lot also for something like peanut butter, Karo syrup, or molasses. But the other thing you can do if you don't have that is we're going to lightly spray this, and I'm going to spoon peanut butter into it. Why do you think I spray something into the measuring cup?
So that it doesn't stick.
You got it. It works much better.
Doesn't stick, yeah.
Yeah.
Because if you were to spray something and it would stick, you don't get your full, the full measurement.
You're right. Do you cook
Yeah.
much?
Yeah, I cook a lot with my mom and my grandma. Every year at Christmas, we do like a ton of baking, and normally our kitchen looks like a candy factory.
How fun.
And we do baking for fair, and usually all 3 of us bake, and we usually bake 3 to 5 items.
Good for you guys. How fun. Okay, what I'm doing, I've filled my cup. Now I'm going to make sure a clear cup is nice because you can see if there's holes, which, you know what, right there, see that? I'm going to just push it down in there to fill it in a little bit more. And again, that's kind of why I like these clear cups. So now we're going to scrape it off. And when it comes time Whoops, Amber, I need to have you put up a little, because I'm putting it back in here. So when it comes, up a little more. When it comes time to come out, it just comes out pretty darn easy. Very easy. Okay, let's see what else I have on the list. Brown sugar we did, peanut butter we did. So the other thing that I would suggest you do when you're cooking is definitely have all of your ingredients in place before you start doing anything. With all your ingredients and all your measuring cups in place, it's pretty hard to make a mistake. And I forgot to say this at the beginning, but before you start cooking, you wash your hands and you wash.
If you're a girl, you take off your jewelry and you put your hair in a hair tie.
That's an excellent, excellent thing. I thought of that today and down. I thought, oh, good thing I'm not really cooking because it wouldn't be good. So you wash the area you're going to cook and your hands. Any questions?
Janet, there's a question. Can you measure liquids in the same measuring cup as you do flour, like dry stuff?
Only if that is your only option. You really need to have a measuring cup that has cups and ounces. And the main thing is that spout. This pouring spout, whoops, I'm going the wrong way. So that as you pour, it goes out. Because if I pour something, well, I have a little vanilla in here. If I pour something out of this, I may not be able to control it, especially if I have a much bigger. Here, it's just going to come pouring out the side, wherever it goes. I can control it.
Perfect, thank you. Any other questions? When would you need to sift flours? That's a great question. When should you sift flour?
I have never sifted flour. Well, I can't say never. I guess 30 years ago I used to, but everything I read now says that flour is made such that it doesn't need to be sifted, but that is exactly why we spoon it into something, whoops, and mix it around a little to put air in it, because it's a different flour than it was, say, 40 years ago. So this is supposed to be good enough. But if you have a sifter and you want to sift it, go ahead. I'd do that.
That was a great question. Other questions? Anybody else have questions for Miss Janet? All right. Well, I will tell you on your. Oh, go ahead.
You were going to show a video on cake flour, but I wonder if
Yeah,
you could
that would be
explain what cake flour is before the video, maybe.
Okay.
Maybe Dawn had. Well, I don't know. Maybe Dawn's comment was related to this first.
No.
At my grandma's house, we use different types of flour. We use almond flour, but we also use almond flour.
Yeah.
A lot harder to cook with because like we were trying to make cookies once. It was our first time ever using it, and like we brought them out and they were just crumbs. All-purpose flour is what we normally use, and that helps it stick together. And the almond flour just like wouldn't stick together.
That's a really good point. There are so many different flours, and all-purpose flour is pretty much made so that you can make bread, cookies, or cake. But the one thing that Dawn is going to talk to you about, cake flour has less protein than all-purpose flour. So when you make cakes, you want it to be a little bit lighter than, say, you want bread or cookies. So she's going to show you a simple way to turn your all-purpose flour into a better cake flour if you happen to have cake flour on hand. The other, like bread flour, that's going to have more protein, which if you wanted to make crepes or something is going to make them very, very heavy. So most people have all-purpose flour, and that's going to be good.
There's a question here says, is it bad if you don't sift for making frosting?
Oh, you mean powdered sugar?
No, if you don't sift the flour. I think it was connected to the flour sifting.
Yeah, I think so too.
Oh, not frosting.
Yeah, because flour probably isn't in the frosting unless
Flour is
it's
not in a
yeah,
frosting.
powdered sugar. Yeah, she says no powdered sugar.
Okay. You know, you can, but you can also with the powdered sugar do what I did with the flour, and that's put a spoon in it and aerate it a little, just put some air in it so it's fluffy, but you can certainly also sift it. You just don't want to put your measuring cup into the bag or the container of powdered sugar because you're going to be packing it. So just spoon it in like we did the flour.
Great questions. Other questions before we go watch our video? Anybody else have questions?
No.
What I was going to say that for your guys' little food skill-a-thon contest on the weekend is we're going to ask some of those questions that Miss Janet just went over. So I think that just so you kind of know that she covered a lot of great things. So other questions for her? She's still going to stay on. We're just going to show you a little video. Any other questions? Okay. All right. Miss Janet, do you have anything to add before we share the video?
I do have a couple things. One is, are you going to have time to show the thermometer video?
Yeah, we have 4 minutes left. So what do you think?
Okay, well, you guys, when you're cooking, you have to know how to correctly use a thermometer. So if we get a chance for you to look at this, this will be great. And then Dawn has a page on conversion. So yeah, let's do the cake flour one, and then Dawn, you decide how much more time we have.
So how you pack brown sugar, would you do the same with just regular sugar?
No, because regular sugar just, you know, it just flows. So you don't have to. Brown sugar doesn't. So this, you just put it in a measuring cup, whatever goes in there, you level it off, that's what you use. Brown sugar doesn't flow, especially after you pack it. If you tried to do that, it would just come out in clumps. So
that's a great question. Yeah, great question. Okay. All right. What I'm going to do right now is I'm going to share my screen, guys. So you're not going to see Miss Janet. I'm going to first share the conversion thing because we want you guys to be able to know where this is that this conversion chart is super helpful. And we're going to put this on that website so that you guys have it. But sometimes I think when you're asked to measure, I don't even know, like 2/3 of a cup or something like that, you might not have an exact 2/3 cup measure. So this is a conversion chart that can help you figure that out. Or sometimes they say that you should have an 1/8 of a cup, and I don't know very many measuring cup sets that come with 1/8 of a cup. And on here it shows you, if you guys look on there at the top left, you have 6 teaspoons or 2 tablespoons equal an 1/8 of a cup. So I think that this conversion chart is super helpful and maybe something you would even want to print off and have in your kitchen with you. So Janet, do you have anything to add to that?
Nope, I think you're right though. That's, I use my little, I have a conversion magnet on my fridge. I use it all the time.
Yeah, okay. I'm going to stop sharing that and I'm going to share again because me and the sharing have a challenge. I'm going to show you the two little, we'll start with the videos. This is going to go over on our time a little bit. We'll show you both of them. But before we do this, in case you have to jump off because we're just about out of our time allotment, I'm going to show them both because I think they're beautiful. And so if you can stay on just a few minutes late today, that would be great. But before I do, since we're going to run over, I just want to make the final announcement that our food skill-a-thon contest is this weekend. It's going to be posted on the state 4-H virtual website by 9 o'clock on Saturday morning, and you have until 9 o'clock Sunday night to finish that. Just one thing to know that kids asked in the last session is once you enter the contest, you can't go out of it and go back into it. So once you start it, you got to finish the whole thing. There's no time limit though, so you could take 15 minutes or you could take 2 hours if you wanted to look up questions or answers. And everything that's going to be on that contest is going to come from stuff that we have talked about and shared. So just know that hopefully you guys have learned and gained from information or things you want to go back and review is on that website. If you don't know where to find the website, if you guys put your email address in the chat box, I'll be sure and send you that link. Otherwise, it's just on the State 4-H website. We've shared that. So quickly, before I show this video, any questions connected to the contest? No questions? Okay. All right. So what
I have a question.
oh, sure. Yes, please do.
So, are they going to go over everything that we've been doing?
No. So for example, today is, I think you, oh, let me pause this. Hold on. Okay. Like, well, there we go. Today, like from today's session, there'll probably be 5 or 6 questions from it. From the equipment ID that Tycee did clear back, like almost 2 weeks ago, Tycee did one on that equipment ID, and there'll be probably like 10 pieces of equipment that you'll have to identify. So it sure won't be from everything, but there will be a little bit taken from each day, which we had 5 lessons. So you'll have something taken from each day.
Okay, because I was really looking forward to doing. I know that I was really looking forward to be doing the food identification, like
Oh, great.
seeing a picture and then.
Yes, we absolutely will have some from there. Remember, we did that and you guys voted that we're gonna have 10 of those. So you're gonna have 10 fruits or vegetables that you'll have to identify. So absolutely, that will be on there. So good deal. Okay, here's our little video. Let's see. All right, let's go. So this is on the, it's just a 2-minute video. Can you guys all hear that?
No.
You can't hear it? Oh, wait. Oh,
No.
well. How's that? Can you hear now?
Nope.
Whoa,
Nope.
how do you make that work?
Darn it.
Over on the left hand, you have a speaker. Does that matter? A little, like, right on the left hand by your play button, pause button.
Whoa.
Right there.
That mutes it though. That doesn't let it go. Like right now it's going. Whoa. We didn't practice.
Well, don't you give them the link?
Yeah, we may have to do that. I don't know why that doesn't.
That's too bad.
Wow, interesting.
I can see if, I'll turn this off. If we can share it on our end.
Yeah, do, because that's bizarre. Like, why does that not work?
Can you email me that link real fast? Dawn?
Sure. Yep. Hang on, guys. We'll just do this. That is bizarre, huh? Whoops. Wait, sorry.
I'm on a laptop and
Alec.
it's super hard to.
Hi, Cameron.
Okay, there you go. See if you got it, Amber. Well, guys, we're learning with you, so just know that. We're totally learning on this Zoom thing too.
So now I have to share my stuff. Share. How do I get back there? Share screen.
Dawn.
Yes.
So when I helped my mom just before this meeting, for me it worked.
Interesting, isn't it? I don't know why.
Because she wanted to play music for her kids, and it worked. All she had to do was stay unmuted, and she had to have her volume up.
Interesting. I just had my volume turned all the way up and on there. Look at Amber's. Oh,
Can you hear that?
And today we're
Can you guys
going
hear
to
that?
yeah, we can hear it now. So rewind it.
Okay.
many recipes call for
We
cake
get Cameron
flour,
off of here, maybe.
and often you don't have it around the house. So instead of dropping everything and going to the store, we're going to show you how you can make your own cake flour. Begin by measuring 1 cup of all-purpose flour. Stir the flour up to incorporate a little air, then gently spoon the flour into the cup until you overfill it. Take a straight edge, fill in the gaps, and go across. Once you have your 1 cup of flour, remove 2 tablespoons. Do that the same way to make sure you have an accurate tablespoon measure. We've removed 2 tablespoons out of our 1 cup of flour. We're going to place it in our mixing bowl. And then we will add 2 tablespoons of cornstarch. You do this by dipping the spoon into the cornstarch, and again, the flat edge of a knife across the top. And all you have to do, stir the cornstarch in with a whisk, and you have 1 cup of cake flour.
You guys still hear us? Any questions?
Yes.
Cake flour?
So there's a question, should you use cake flour in cookies or all-purpose flour in cookies?
Oh, where are we at? Why are we talking here? Let's stop. Sorry. Okay, sorry. There were the, oh, what the heck?
Oh, it's automatically going to the next.
One of the most
Oh,
common
goodness, sorry. Technical difficulties today.
Okay, did you hear that? So do you,
No.
should you use cake flour in cookies or you should use all-purpose flour?
You should use all-purpose flour. The cake flour, in recipes that need that, it will call for cake flour.
Perfect.
That's when you use it. So, yep.
It says,
So,
can you use cake flour
one
for just
other-
cakes? I guess is the. Is there
What
other
was the-
things that you would use it in besides just cakes?
Well, there are going to be cookies that are cake-like, and they may call for cake, but again, I would only use cake flour if the recipe calls for it. And right off the top of my head, I can't think of anything else, but I bet there are some things. Well, it may be quite a while, but when you finally get to go to the grocery store, look at the box of cake flour and see what it says.
I have a question.
Uh-huh.
So if it kind of just went out of my, it kind of just went out of my brain.
Oh, dear.
So if you have a recipe of cookies that calls for all-purpose flour, but you don't have it, can you substitute with cake flour just because like you need cookies and you don't have what you need at the moment?
Huh. You know, that would be worth a try. I guess the ideal thing would be as if you had a little bit of flour and you made it up with the cake flour you have on hand. When you're doing something like that, I would make some notes because it could be an interesting baking experience or experiment.
I was just thinking of that because like at my house we're always wanting to make something and then we don't have the ingredients and we're like, oh, well, can we just throw in that to make it better or to try to at least get it to taste similar because we can't go to the store right now.
Yeah. I'll tell you one thing I'm going to suggest too is when you're experimenting like that, if you're doing cookies, I would only make 1 or 2 at first because you may have to change the temperature, you may have to change other things. So if you're going to experiment, do it that way.
So what does cake flour change about stuff?
It has a little less protein. It's much lighter than all-purpose flour.
All right, those are great questions. Okay, we're gonna watch the thermometer video. It's just gonna take 2 minutes as well.
One of the most common questions in cooking, especially about meat and poultry, is how to tell if food is done. The only way to tell if food has been cooked to a safe temperature is
A lot of people.
Dang it.
It's really glitchy for me.
Well, it's trying to catch up. It is not internet, but we could probably send these links to them along or put them on that website. Would that work, Janet? To help. Or yeah, Dawn.
That's okay.
Yes, Amber, I'll put them on. So it's a good chance for you guys to go find that virtual website. So if you don't know where to find the virtual website, why don't you put your email address in the chat box and I'll send it.
Let's see if it'll work now.
every home cook should have one to make sure food is safe for you, your family, and your guests. we recommend digital tip-sensitive instant read thermometers. You may need to calibrate your thermometer before its first use. To calibrate, follow the package instructions. For a whole turkey or chicken, the USDA recommends testing the temperature in 3 places: the thickest part of the thigh, the thickest part of the wing, and the thickest part of the breast. Insert the probe end into the thickest part, away from any bone, fat, or gristle. Wait several seconds for the temperature reading to stabilize. Compare the thermometer reading to a chart of safe internal cooking temperatures. The safe temperature for poultry has at least 165 degrees Fahrenheit. Keep this chart with your thermometer so you will always have the information handy. If you are measuring something thinner, like burgers or chicken breasts, you'll need to stick the probe into the side so the point reaches the center. The safe temperature for ground beef is at least 160 degrees Fahrenheit. Egg dishes or mixed dishes with ground meat, poultry, or seafood should also be checked with a thermometer. Test these foods in the thickest part or the center of the dish. The safe internal temperature for egg dishes has at least 160 degrees Fahrenheit. For mixed dishes or leftovers, it is at least 165 degrees Fahrenheit. Remember to clean your thermometer after using it. Hand wash the probe in hot, soapy water. Don't submerge it completely because this could damage it. Store your clean thermometer in its case to keep it protected. Cook smart and eat smart by checking your foods to make sure they are cooked to a safe temperature. By doing so, you can help protect yourself and those you care about from foodborne illnesses.
All
Any
right, guys.
questions for Janet about thermometers? Sorry. Let's see.
That's
turn the
perfect.
share.
Okay, other
All right.
questions about measuring? We're super thankful to Miss Janet and Amber for doing this today. Some other
One thing,
questions? Go ahead, what'd you say?
it's not a question, but I've had people do this before, and it's not the best for your health. If you have like a barbecue thermometer or something, don't use it as like to use it as like when you're making caramel. Get a candy thermometer. Don't use your barbecue thermometer.
He is absolutely right. A candy thermometer, or I'm sorry, a candy thermometer is not the same as these meat thermometers.
Great tip. That's a great tip.
Yeah.
All right, well, thanks, guys. Thanks for joining us on our food sessions. I think it's turned out great. We appreciate all your guys' interaction and asking questions and being good audiences. Hopefully you've learned a little bit, or maybe got something refreshed that you already knew. And we think, oh, sure, please do.
So, if you pack it down and you get too much, how does it make a difference?
Are you talking about flour?
Yeah.
Oh, if you put too much flour in, your cookies or whatever it is you're making are going to be heavy and thick. And maybe when you bite them, they're going to just fall apart.
Okay.
All right, there was a question about the recordings for the other lessons. Unfortunately, some of them got recorded and some didn't. So unfortunately, I'm not quite sure why. I think it's because we're all experiencing some internet challenges, is that some of the internet glitches logged it off when we were trying to record. So the ones that we do have recordings are on that same virtual website. So I'm trying to get them posted and edited if we can get them, but some of them we're just not gonna be able to get up there. But all the learning lessons that we have should almost be loaded there. I think there's only a couple missing on dogs now. So anyways, but all right, sounds good. Thank you guys. Have a good afternoon. And thanks for joining us. Tomorrow is our final learning session at 1 o'clock for dogs and livestock. So thanks, guys. Have a good afternoon. Thanks, Janet and Amber.
Thank you.